What's going on, guys? Evan the Dark Souls enthusiast here, bringing you more Dark Souls on the PlayStation 3. This is going to be another entry on my gameplay, New Game Plus gameplay commentary series. For those of you that aren't watching the entire series, we last left off with me cleaning out New Londo, all revved up to go battle the Four Kings, then suddenly realizing that I didn't have the Abyss Walker's Ring from Sif. So obviously, actually came through the New Londo shortcut, which I don't think I've ever used at any other point in the game, and now going to try to go sort of the back route up into the forest to fight Sif. Typically I come through the main blacksmith gate with the crest and everything, and I think most players do as well, but you know, this is certainly an option. I think it's a bad option. In hindsight, I wish I hadn't even come up this way at all. I wish I'd just gone back up through Firelink and then hit it that way, but this way did let me knock out the whole Hydra sequence. Every playthrough I insist on taking down the Hydra, and every playthrough I just find it to be a complete waste of time because this character will never have the magic to cast any of the spells that Dust sells. And I already have all the magic trophies, so I don't need to purchase them just for the sake of purchasing them. But as I've said in other gameplay commentaries, I tend to try to hit everything I can in every area. I don't know why. I think it's some sort of perfectionist mentality coming out. But, in other news, in the last gameplay commentary I kind of rushed through something I think I've talked about before, which is weapon choice. But I think I'm going to touch on it again because I still get questions about what kind of weapons people should use and things like that, what's good, what's bad. I want to take an opportunity to sort of talk about my experience with the weapon classes, because I have not used every single weapon in Dark Souls, but I have used most, and I definitely have a comprehension of, like, the advantages to various weapon types and things like that. So I don't really have a structured way of doing this, but I did want to sort of dialogue about it a little bit. So first I want to talk once again about the elemental weapons, which I mentioned in last gameplay commentary, but I want to emphasize that again in the opening of this commentary. Absolutely. Everyone's first character, I would argue, there's a strong... When you talk about using like your first character on Dark Souls or any of the Souls series, although Demon Souls didn't have the same weapon systems as Dark Souls does, and you're going to see some choppy frame rate in my gameplay. That's actually not my editing software, that's the actual gameplay getting choppy. That's never happened to me before, so I was a little shocked by that, but I guess my PlayStation 3 can't handle all the graphical things. We'll see how my PC handles it when that comes out. But in any case, as I was saying, the nice thing about making an elemental build is it's forgiving. You just get enough stats to wield whatever weapon you want to wield, and from there you get to practice with a huge variety of weapons, anything in your stat range. So a really cool first character in my opinion, well, not an optimized character, but a great character that will function for PvP and would be great for player versus engine would definitely be just get a large degree of dexterity and strength. Not like in the 50s, but get like, you know, maybe like the 20s of each. And then at that point, you'll have enough stats that you can use most of the weapons in the game, and you'll just have to make an elemental. So you can make plenty of fire and chaos weapons, and you can test them and see what you like. So when you make another character, because a true Souls veteran is going to make a couple different characters, when you make a different character, you can at least get a handle for all the different movesets and all the different weapons. And you'll still have more vitality than most weapon types would. Like, most builds that aren't elemental stop their vitality between 50 and 60, with honorable mentions going to Black Knight weapons, which sometimes go much higher, which is all great, but typically you get the most vitality on an elemental weapon. So, strongly encourage people to try that before they make characters with, you know, more focused stat allocations like Moonlight Greatswords and things like that, where you're going to have to dump a lot of points into a scaling stat, which ultimately results in having a much lower vitality. Although it's important to understand, like, on stats on Dark Souls, there are a point of diminishing returns in various stats. Like, dexterity really stops adding any substantial amount of damage after, like, the 35 to 40 range. Strength caps off around the same. I'm not sure the actual breakpoints, because they will always continue to add damage, but it just drops off really bad. I know most people stop dexterity around 40 and stop strength at something similar if they're doing like a crushing build. And crushing, of course, refers to a heavily strength-emphasized build. But in either case, other breakpoints of noteworthy. If you're using a lot of pyromancy, dexterity stops increasing the cast speed of pyromancy at 45. And after testing, I would say the 40 to 45 jump is actually noticeable in your pyromancy. So if you're going to crutch heavily on pyromancy, pumping dex really isn't that bad of a decision. Although it does kind of pigeonhole your character into using dex weapons, because it's kind of foolish to get like 45 dex and not use a dex weapon. So that's definitely something to consider. But in any case, you'll see me struggling to kill off the Hydra. I think the Hydra is a very poorly scripted boss fight. And it's very cool, but it's just always such a pain to fight. It's like time-consuming and not really a huge challenge. It's actually more visually threatening than it is actually threatening. But in terms of weapons, I think that things, different things for different people, but I definitely think some of the more disappointing weapons to use, at least for me, I was rather disappointed when I used spears. Now, there's anything wrong with spears. Spears are good, but they rely on a lot of spacing and chipping. This is obviously in PvP, because in PvE you can really make anything work. In fact, in PvE, spears might be the easiest, along with the Black Knight Great Axe, but in terms of PvP, it can actually be sort of frustrating with spears, or really any small weapons that don't have anything that breaks poise, like rapiers and spears. Like, when I use rapiers in PvP, it basically forces you into using backstabs, more often than not with the Hornet's Ring if you want to do the most effective build you can. So, if you don't want to backstab all day, every day, you probably will wind up not using a rapier or a dagger, because both are just not positioned well to do anything but backstab. That's unfortunate. You'll see me save loading here to make the crystal golem appear. So that's definitely something to think about with rapiers, is you can poke through shields and do a lot of like ranged little jabs and stuff like that to chip away at people's life, but it's a really, really slow process unless you wind up landing backstabs. Spears are kind of the same way. There are spears that will do substantially more damage than rapiers, like the demon spear, but you're still going to rely on a lot of range. And you'll just have to stay outside their effective range and chip them out, because spears and rapiers have very, very little poise damage, which puts you in a situation where you absolutely can't let people get close to you because of the poise mechanic in Dark Souls. People will typically, they'll take the hit from whatever weapon you're using, then they will wind up running past you or rolling past you and backstabbing you during your swing animation. Like, even if you take one swing, if your spacing is off, they can still roll behind you and get you. Because not every attack's going to stagger the enemy. So it's definitely something to consider. It's something I did consider on my first couple characters, where I wanted to make like these really cool like Sparta-styled spear wielders, where I winded up with like really high-strength spears in order to wield the Great Shield of Artorias. I figured, let's just get the highest ability shield in the game, get a sweet elemental spear, and let's go rock face. And turned out that it was pointless. So definitely understand the limitations of your weapons. If you don't want to backpedal and poke a lot, be careful with the spears. And if you are going to use spears for PvP, you're basically going to wind up either using the Demon Spear, because it's probably the most efficient spear in the game for damage if you're not using something elemental, or you're going to use an Elemental Partisan, because it has the standard poking action of a spear, but also has like a sweeping attack, if I recall. I hope that's the Partisan, guys. If it's not the Partisan, let me know. But as I recall, the Partisan, one of the spears definitely has an attack that has like a wide arc on it, on the R2, which is like a swing. Definitely great to have on a spear, because people tend to hold their shield up and just sidestep around you a lot when you're poking with spears. And of course, if you like a little bit of role-play and you like really, really focused builds, then you can absolutely make use of the Dragon Slayer Spear, Ornstein Spear. And that's pretty cool. It's a really neat weapon to use, and the R2 special attacks are really cool. I've never been particularly impressed with it, but I know I see a lot of players using it to success, but it falls into the same category of get ready to work on your spacing a lot, because that's the game breaker with spears. Moving on to like other weapons, like the Boulder Side Sword is like a sword unto itself, because its moveset is like no other. It's really, really good. It has a long poke range, it has a fast attack, it's got good scaling on dexterity. Really great weapon, heavily requested on the channel, and pretty fun to use in general, so highly recommend the Boulder Sword. You have the Moonlight Greatsword, which stands as a weapon unto itself. Now, it'd be hard for me to give an exhaustive list of all weapons. Axes do a tremendous amount of damage, but typically don't have a lot of range. They usually have a high stat requirements to use. I'm a big fan of really a lot of the weapons. A lot of the weapons in the game definitely have their merits of use, but I typically favor anything that actually does damage to poise, because I can't stand hitting somebody and then having them poise through it and backstab me. So I'm a big fan of like Claymore style movesets where they swing fast and damage poise. Black Knight Great Axe, same thing there. Of course, the Black Knight Great Axe is really easy to parry. That's something to watch out for. So if you end up PvPing with it a lot, if you just start swinging with it, you're going to get parried. And it's probably going to be an instant kill or a nigh instant kill, because the parry damage on things with a Hornet's Ring is insane. Like over 2 grand life damage sometimes. So, like I said, that was not to give an exhaustive list of the weapons. That's just some weapons I have a lot of experience with that I really like. I really don't like buff weapons anymore because I just don't like buffing. So that's why I wind up not using a lot of weapons, is because you rely on weapon buffs like Sunlight Blade, Dark Moon Blade, or you wind up using like Turpentines and stuff like that. And that's all cool. It's not a big deal. It's just not something I like doing. I hate having my buff wearing off mid-fight, and then I'm just not in a very good position in a fight. And then I find my opponent, rightfully so, won't give me the opportunity to rebuff, and they shouldn't. They should press the attack when my buff's gone. But that kind of forces me to switch over to like usually my alternate Chaos Rapier for the insane backstab damage to pull out the fight, since I can't rebuff. And if I was going to try to like Rapier backstab all fight, I'd probably just carry a Rapier. I wouldn't have a whole other build dedicated to another weapon. So it's kind of my thoughts on that. Anyway, carrying on. Moving beyond the weapons, weapon discussion, which has been done on this channel numerous times, where I've talked about my thoughts on weapons and things like that. I just want to talk a little bit about spacing weapons, because I know a lot of people seem to have like an affection for spears and stuff like that and shields, and so do I. And one last little tidbit with that is, don't pump your strength for really, really strong shields, because they're all pretty worthless. It's a little disheartening to say, but there's at no point in the game are you really going to need the extremely high stability numbers you'd find on like, a Great Shield of Artorias or something like that. You'll see me start saving here because I saw that I was getting invaded, and I wasn't in a position to handle an invasion with all those Force Covenant dudes around me. If you just reload like that, it'll cancel the invasion. You'll get invaded again, probably by the same person, shortly thereafter, but save loading cancels the immediate invasion, which is helpful for me when I'm just trying to quest and do a commentary. Sometimes getting invaded really breaks. I think getting invaded adds a lot to the commentary in terms of the Souls universe, but I also think it sort of can break the momentum if I die, go back to a bonfire, and have a long run and stuff like that. And plus, it's frustrating for me at times. But in any case, as you know, I leave some invasions in and some I start quit out. Just depends on the kind of position I'm in. Right now, I knew it wouldn't even be a fair fight because I'd be getting gangbanged by all the Force Covenant dudes, and it just wasn't going to work out, so start loaded it. But yeah, I find that the best shields in the game actually require like 16-ish strength. Like, if you don't want to parry, then, at 16 strength you get access to, I believe it's, the Eagle Shield, which has a ton of stability for its weight. Great shield. You have the White Knight Shield, also a great shield, a great stability for its weight. White Knight Shield is arguably the best shield in the game right now. Black Knight Shield, 16 strength. You get that insane fire resistance. Heater Shield, legitimate physical reduction while at the same time giving you access to fast parry speed, because the Heater Shield has a faster parry speed than other shields. It's kind of like a parrying dagger on a shield. So that's all definitely thoughts to have in mind when you select your shield, but never pump strength on any character just to get a shield, because it's never going to be worth it. Having done it, I've gone that huge strength route and then getting a Great Shield of Artorias to use with like a low strength weapon. That's stupid. If you want to use a really high strength shield, which you really shouldn't, it's not worth the wait. The added stability really doesn't do a lot for you. But if you're just determined to use it for role play, or you think it's cool, which, I've done stuff like that before, then I recommend using at least a weapon that plays to that strength. Like, if you're going to have that many points into the attribute of strength, you should pick a weapon that benefits from it. Either scales on strength or requires a lot of strength to carry. It's too bad they didn't put like a really high strength spear into the game. That would have been a neat little combination. Great Spear of Artorias or something like that. Sorry, I hear people outside distracting me. I would really enjoy that for sure. But now that I've rambled on about the kind of shield choice I'd like, I actually think that was somewhat informative. I would like to sort of share my big news for the day. I got my grades for this quarter in, and I was bittersweet because this was a tough quarter for me, largely due to my lack of focus and due to the fact that I struggled in some classes. The more, like, group conversation, the more, like, I like discussion, but large group discussions make me uncomfortable. I don't think it's not necessarily the fact that I'm shy, it's the fact that I get irritated. I mean, I am a little shy, but that's not really what throws me off so much as I just get bored of listening to people's opinions, not because I don't care, but because I find a large discussion classes, because you can't really delve into discussion deeply, or at least you typically don't in class, I find, because there's too many people that have something to say and should have the opportunity to speak, but you wind up not really getting in-depth on conversations, just people give their surface level thoughts, and maybe two people will have a dialogue where they get slightly beyond the surface level of conversation, but beyond that point, it just agitates me because I have to listen to people repeat each other, not because they're stupid or something negative like that, but just because that's what's happening, you know. In large discussion class, I feel discussion topics stagnate on something, and I just get bored and frustrated, and I start drawing in my notebook and not getting anything out of the class, and that's a long 3 hours to hear a discussion you're not really engaging with. So that probably says more about me than the class, but definitely not a huge fan of large group discussions. Love small group discussions, absolutely love them, and small to me is like 4 people or under, preferably 3. I like 2 to 3 people in a discussion, but that's counting myself, but I'm flexible. So I get invaded here, and I decide I'm going to start popping some humanities to try to use a Chaos Rapier. Then I'm like, you know what? Screw it. I just won't use it. But in any case, as I was saying previously, my grade, or it wasn't the same, it was about this quarter, my grades came out today, and that was pretty bittersweet for sure, because 4 classes, 3 A's and a B. And that's pretty good. I've never been a guy who's striving for perfection in my academics, but it's, I don't really mind having something less than a 4.0. But I had a 4.0 for my first 2 quarters, and this is my 3rd quarter, and you get to that point where you're like, man, I kind of like to keep that 4.0. Then I wind up blowing it by getting a B in a class I could have had an A in if I had really applied myself a little more. And I say that not as an excuse, that's just an acknowledgement of fact. As a student, as a student and a professional within the world of higher education, I think that's the most common excuse I hear for students for anything is, I just couldn't get motivated and or this or that or the other thing. And I have no doubt that that is true, having been there. But at the same time, if you can't get motivated to do something, that's completely acceptable. I mean, it's completely acceptable, but it's not a completely acceptable excuse. Because it's just, I don't know what just happened to me. That was like the laggiest PvP moment ever. One of the, I've had many laggy PvP moments, but it's like I think that guy probably backstabbed me. But in any case, yeah. Not getting motivated is a failure. It's not a failure of intellect, but it is definitely a failure that one has to own up to. So I own up to my own lack of motivation in doing a lot of things I want to get done. I exercise a little bit. I'd like to exercise more in my life. I think a lot of people have that. I'd like to study more, like any student, etc., but we all do what we can, so pretty sad, though, that my 4.0 dropped to like a 3.87 or something like that. Hopefully by the end it'll get up to a 3.9. That's my goal, just because throughout undergraduate and high school, my GPA goal was like a 3.5, and I met it. But now I kind of want to get like a 3.9 or a 4.0, just so I can say in graduate school that I improved from where I was in my previous educational experiences. But we're going to wrap up this video with a little Sith battle. So I think I'm going to go ahead and talk through this one, because there's been so many Sith battles posted on YouTube and on my channel silently that there's probably nothing wrong with talking through these boss fights at this point. And sometimes it just depends if I've run out of things to say. In this case, I'm still talking, so I'm going to keep commentating through the boss fight. So I appreciate some of you guys putting some encouraging words on the channel. That's always nice. Like I said, I don't really have the time to respond to individual comments anymore, because I actually get a lot more, which is really exciting. But now I try to answer like the overall comments in the video, where I just try to address recurrent themes I'm seeing. I'm still getting a lot of commentary about pronunciation, and I've talked about that before, but I'll say it again. For anything I mispronounce, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to re-render and redo a 20 to 40 minute commentary because I mispronounced the names of various weapons. I just am over it. Next, I have been blocking hater comments on the channel. I feel like that's the best way to deal with it. Either block them or ignore them. So that continues. And by the way, Civ is one of my favorite boss fights. It's not particularly hard. I think it should have been harder. But you can really roll through all his attacks with the invincible frames, or you can block them all relatively easily. Although it is noteworthy that his double spin, where he just grips the sword and spins twice in a circle, if you block that, you'll probably lose all your stamina, then the second hit will take you down. One of the rare moments where the crazy stability shields are actually pretty useful. Like, I will say, if you have a Great Shield of Artorias on your character, you can pretty much block anything that's blockable. Like, if the attack is blockable, the Great Shield of Artorias will block it for you. That thing is nuts in Player vs. Engine, where it pretty much turns your entire playthrough into just a block fest, which is fun. I really like to block. In PvP and PvE, I think blocking is one of my favorite mechanics in the Souls series, as it's so seamless and easy to use. I like the fact that people can chip it with Elemental and stuff like that, so love the shield mechanics. Skyrim's kind of the same way, active blocking. Although, the Elder Scrolls Morrowind, they had like a D&D style of blocking where instead of actively blocking, like, you had X% chance of block, and once you got really high, you had like a 90+% chance of blocking. That was pretty cool too. I actually really enjoyed D&D style fighting systems for single player games, but that seems to be like a dying breed. The Elder Scrolls Morrowind is probably the game that I played more than any other. I was thinking about that the other day, and it's definitely a toss-up between Xenogears and the Elder Scrolls for the game I put the most time into over any other, although Dark Souls is quickly catching up to both of them. In any case, that's the end of this gameplay commentary. Thank you for watching. I hope to see you next time.